These are the heartbreaking scenes as a blonde cocker spaniel refuses to leave the side of its owner's coffin during a mass funeral for the victims killed in this week's devastating Italian earthquake. The dog was photographed in a gym beside its owner's coffin, who is believed to be from the village of Accumoli, one of the worst hit areas affected by the earthquake. Weeping relatives hugged each other and reached out to touch the wooden coffins at a state funeral on Saturday for some of the 291 people killed in the tragedy that year. Amongst the 35 coffins laid out in a sports hall were small caskets holding the bodies of an 18-month-old baby and a 9-year-old girl, 2 of the 21 children who are known to have died when the quake hit central Italy early in August 2016. Bishop Giovanni de Ercole said, "Don't be afraid to bewail your suffering. We have seen so much suffering, but I ask you not to lose your courage. Only together can we rebuild our houses and churches. Above all, together we can give life back to our communities," he said, speaking in front of a dusty crucifix salvaged from one of the dozens of churches devastated by the quake. Even as the funeral mass was being held, rescuers kept searching through the rubble of the worst-hit town Amatrice, but acknowledged they had little hope of finding more survivors from Italy's worst earthquake in 7 years. 9 more bodies were recovered from the town on Saturday, including 3 pulled overnight from the crumpled Hotel Roma, bringing the death toll in Amatrice alone to 230 residents and tourists. Authorities said 387 people were still in hospital, with 1 patient dying of his injuries during the day. One of the last people to be plucked alive from the debris was a girl called Georgia, who turned 4 on Saturday. Her sister Julia's small coffin lay in the center of the sports hall for the funeral mass. "Hello, little one," said a handwritten note left on her coffin by one of the rescue teams that retrieved her body. "I am sorry that we arrived late. You had already stopped breathing, but I want you to know up there that we did all we could to get you out of there." Relatives of the dead sat on chairs next to the coffins or knelt on the floor, their arms resting on the caskets, which were covered in flowers. One man, his legs covered in cuts, sat in a wheelchair, his head bowed. Some of the mourners clutched framed photos of their loved ones. As the names of the dead were read out, hundreds of people outside the sweltering sports hall broke into prolonged applause in a sign of solidarity with the families. Italian President Sergio Mattarella and Prime Minister Matteo Renzi lingered after the service had ended to talk to the ranks of mourners. "We will all decide together how to get going again, but don't give up. That is crucial," Renzi told one youth. Authorities have released the names of 181 victims. The youngest was 5 months old, the oldest 93. 6 Romanians, 3 Britons, a Spanish woman, a Canadian, and an Albanian died in the calamity. Most of the buildings in the quake zone had no anti-seismic protection, but even some of those that did, including a school in Amatrice that was renovated in 2012, fell apart. Magistrates have opened an investigation into some of the incidents, including the collapse of a bell tower in the town of Accumoli, which smashed through the roof of an adjacent building, killing a family of 4. "What happened cannot just be considered fate," said prosecutor Giuseppe Saiva, who was leading the probe. "If these buildings had been constructed like they are in Japan, then they would not have collapsed," he told La Repubblica newspaper. Renzi has promised to rebuild the shattered communities, and the mayor of Amatrice urged the government to learn the lessons of painfully slow post-quake reconstructions of the past. Survivors in some of the worst-hit areas feared that their little hamlets, sparsely populated outside the holiday months, would become ghost towns unless the flattened Amatrice was swiftly rebuilt. "That's where the grocery stores, shops, and restaurants were, and these little villages depended on it," said Eduardo Nibbi, 31, whose family has roots in the badly damaged hamlet of San Lorenzo e Flaviano. Aftershocks continued to rattle the area overnight, the strongest measuring 4.2. The Italian Geological Institute said more than 1,350 aftershocks had hit Italy's central mountains since Wednesday's pre-dawn 6.2 magnitude quake. Italy sits on two fault lines, making it one of the most seismically active countries in Europe. Almost 30 people died in earthquakes in northern Italy in 2012, and more than 300 in the city of L'Aquila in 2009.